Okay, well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerry White, and I'm here from Trinity College Law School to tell you a little bit about the study of law at Trinity, a little bit about the law school itself, and about the different degree programs that we offer. But before I start telling you about the different courses, I thought I'd start by asking the question, why study law? Now, as is often the case, William Shakespeare was one of the first writers in English to capture the general public sentiment towards lawyers. If you look at Henry VI, Part 2, Act 4, Scene 2, he has one of his characters, the aptly named Dick the Butcher, exclaim, "The first thing we'll do, let's kill all the lawyers." And you get the same sentiment in a recent report from a scientific research institute, that in this particular institute they're going to start using lawyers rather than laboratory rats in their experiments. And there were three reasons given for this. First of all, laboratory assistants can become attached to rats. Secondly, the use of lawyers in scientific experiments is not opposed by any animal rights organization. And finally, there are some things even a rat won't do. So there's a general dislike of lawyers, and you have to ask the question, why would you study law? And I suppose the first explanation that people will give is that they look at law and the legal profession as a pathway to sort of a lucrative career, that it's, you know, it's in some instances it is very well paid. And that is obviously true. You know, there's a lot of comment about the sort of fees that lawyers got, particularly appearing before tribunals. I should caution that they were the very upper end or high end of the profession, and that most lawyers don't earn the sort of monies that you would have read about in the papers. But that said, it is true that, generally speaking, the legal profession is well rewarded. Now, of course, the legal profession, no more than any other part of Irish society, is not immune to the economic difficulties that the country is going through, and there has been a certain retrenchment, you know, in recent years, firms of solicitors having to consolidate what they're doing and not expand. There isn't really much I can say to you about that. We just have to get through this process. But I mean, I wouldn't want you to think that you know, that the legal profession has escaped the economic difficulties that other professions and other careers are experiencing. So that's one reason why people might want to do law. There's another reason, which is the idea that if you study law, if you become a lawyer, that you may be able to contribute to society, that you may be able to promote social justice. And I wouldn't underestimate that as an important motivation here. It's no coincidence that such outstanding individuals as Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela were all lawyers. They found themselves in situations where they were able to contribute in hugely significant ways to the development and the improvement of their respective societies. And I think their legal background would have helped them in that. And so the pursuit of social justice is another reason why people might want to consider pursuing a legal career. It's also the case that a law degree is a good general qualification. I guess most people would probably think, well, if I'm going to study law in college, I'm going to end up as a lawyer. And in fact, that's not actually the case. Many, or most law students, it's true, probably do end up working as lawyers. But a significant number of law students go into other areas of activity. And the law degree is a good general qualification as far as that goes. I remember being told that you could do anything with a law degree that you can do with an arts degree except teach. And so we would have graduates working you know, in the areas of banking, finance, public service, computers, publishing, We even have one or two, who've carved out careers for themselves as novelists and artists. So it's a good general qualification. And if you do decide to study law at college, don't assume that you will necessarily end up as a solicitor or as a barrister. So those are the answers I would give to anyone who's thinking about pursuing law at third level. Next question I want to pose is, well, if you're thinking about doing law at third level, why would you pick Trinity College over and above any of the other law schools that are providing law degrees? Doesn't come easy to, Irish people to be who were generally seen as sort of fairly modest, but just talking about my colleagues, I have to say to you that we have, in terms of the staff that we have here, we have a very high international reputation. When you look at certain areas of the law, like administrative law, constitutional law, environmental law, equity, international law, torts, sports law, employment law, civil and criminal procedure, the leading textbooks in those areas are written by people who are currently on the staff here in Trinity College. So if you come to Trinity College Law School, you'll be working with people who are operating at the cutting edge of legal research in Ireland. Okay? It's also the case that, as you probably are aware, and I'll talk in a moment about the CAO points, the points system and the points requirements for law in Trinity means that we attract really top students. So if you get into the law school, you'll be studying with and mixing with people who are very high achievers, very bright students indeed. And there's also something that we pride ourselves upon in relation to the law school, and that is we have a strong sense of community in the law school. There are various aspects to this. There are a number of student societies that are focused primarily on law students. So, for example, the Law Society, which is a student debating society. Non-law students may join it, but generally speaking, most of the students in that tend to be law students, and it fosters a good sense of community. There's the Free Legal Advice Centres, which is, again, a voluntary organisation. There's a student branch here in college, and the students assist the national organisation in campaigning around legal justice issues or arranging for students to be provided with free legal advice. There's the European Law Students Association, which is focusing, as the name suggests, on European law, students who are interested in that area. And then there's this sort of the staff-student relationships. Within Trinity College, we have a very distinctive service called the tutorial service. Students who come into Trinity are assigned to an academic member of staff called the tutor. And the tutor is, in a sense, the student's academic guardian angel while the student is in college. So the tutor will help the student with routine things like references or getting exam results. And then if things go if there are little difficulties, you're sick, you're not able to submit an essay on time, you go to the tutor, and the tutor will represent you in relation to sorting out those sort of issues. Now, in the law school, law students are invariably assigned to members of the law school staff, as tutors. So again, there's that sort of bond that's developed between staff and students. And then in terms of other activities, we put on events for incoming first-year students so that they can get to know staff and they can get to know their fellow students. There's a law school staff-student cabaret around the month of February, March, which is the highlight of the social calendar as far as the law school is concerned. So there's all that sense in which we try to build up a strong sense of community. And certainly speaking as a staff member, we are driven by the idea that the welfare of the student is at the centre of our activities. That's one of our guiding principles. So strong sense of community. Okay, well, let me tell you something about the entry requirements to the various courses that we offer here in Trinity. And as you might be aware, we have 5 different degree programs. Let me just get them all up there now. And those are the points requirements from 2011. I think, in fact, the first one, I think, may be a mistake. When I checked again this morning, I think the points requirements for 2011 for single honours law was 505 points and not 510 as I have on the overhead, so apologies for that. So 505 points, random selection for single honours law. That's what we call pure law degree, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. In relation to law and French, the points requirements last year were 550 random selection. Now, you should also note that in order to get into law and French, you are required to have a C1 in honours French in the Leaving Cert, or a grade C in French in the A-levels. That's a special requirement for that particular course as well. With regard to law and German, the points requirements last year were 495, and again there's a requirement that you have a C1 in honours German in the Leaving Cert, or a grade C in German in the A-levels. And then we have two new courses which were introduced 2 years ago. Law and Politics, where the entrance requirements last year were 560 points, and then Law and Business, where the entrance requirements were 555, random selection. And again, there's a requirement that you must have a basic qualification in maths, that you would have either a C3 in ordinary level maths in the Leaving Cert, or a D3 in higher level maths in the Leaving Cert, or if you're coming in with an A level, that you would have grade B maths in the A levels. Okay. So those are the 5 different courses that we offer. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the different courses, and I'll talk first of all about the single honours law programme, and then we'll compare that with the law and language programmes and the law and politics and law and business. So the law programme then, this is the straightforward degree, the 4-year degree. Basically, this is the way in which this course is taught. For the first 2 years that you do law at Trinity, you're told what subjects you have to study. So there are certain compulsory subjects that I'll mention in a moment that you cover in first year and in second year. And then when you get to 3rd year and 4th year, you're given a list of about maybe 2 dozen different legal subjects, and you have to pick from those subjects. So you get to shape the content of the degree program. You get to pick the subjects that you are particularly interested in. So let's look at the first year initially. What subjects do you study in first year? Well, you study 6 subjects, 3 in the first semester, which takes you up to just shortly before Christmas, and then 3 in the second semester, which is January through to, I guess, April sometime. So what are these subjects? Well, in first year, you will study legal systems and methods. This is basically an introductory course explaining to people who obviously haven't studied law before the different legal institutions we have in this country, the courts, for example, or the different legal officers. It also introduces you to the whole skill of how to read legal judgments. That's a big feature of studying law, reading decisions of the High Court, or reading decisions of the Supreme Court, or the European Court of Human Rights, or sometimes reading decisions of the United States Supreme Court. So you have to learn how to read and how to analyse these sort of judgments, and that's what legal systems and methods is concerned about. Second subject you do in first semester is a subject called torts, non-contractual civil liability. But what does that mean in English? Well, it's referring to situations in which one individual could sue another individual in the absence of a contract between the 2 individuals. Let's say I'm driving my car negligently and I crash into you and I injure you. There's no contract or agreement between us in that situation, but because I acted negligently and caused you injury, you can sue me. So that's the tort of negligence. Or if I got up in a public arena and I said that, you know, some person was a scoundrel and a thief and a blackguard, and if this was entirely untrue, then I would have defamed that person, and that person could sue me for defamation. Or if you trespass on property, or if you cause economic loss to a business, these are all areas in which one party can sue another even in the absence of a contract. And that's what the law of tort looks at. It looks at all of these different areas in which one individual can sue another. The third subject that people study in the first semester in first year is constitutional law, the first part of constitutional law. The Constitution is our most important domestic law. It was adopted in 1937, and it sets out the rules and regulations for Irish society. So in this subject, you would look at the different constitutional institutions that have been established, like the Oireachtas, the presidency, the courts, the government. You would also look at some of the fundamental rights provisions that are provided in the Constitution. The guarantee of equality or the guarantee of personal rights. So that takes us up to Christmas. Then after Christmas there's a switch over in subjects, and for the second semester first year students would study the following subjects. They will study legislation and regulation. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that the ability to read cases is very important for students. Well, so too is the ability to interpret statutes and statutory instruments. And this course gives you the skills to do that, to read a piece of legislation and to work out what exactly does the legislation require. And we also, in this subject as well, we also look at how regulators work. I mean, this is a relatively new phenomenon the last 10 or 15 years in Irish society. You have regulators in a whole range of areas, like financial regulators or the Environmental Protection Agency. And the regulation, you know, this course will look at the powers of regulators and how they operate. Second subject that you study is contract. Well, this is, you know, agreements between parties. How can they be formed? What sort of terms can be applied? And what happens if one of the parties acts in breach of contract? And then finally you have criminal law, which is a subject to which most students can readily relate, because even though they've never studied law before, you know, in general culture, listening to the news or watching TV or going to the movies, you come up against drama set in a criminal law context. So it tells you, you know, about the different crimes that are set out in the criminal code, in the legislation, and the various defences that people can rely upon if they are being prosecuted by the state. So that's first year. In second year, in the first part of second year, you study administrative law. This is how the courts can control statutory bodies to make sure that they don't exceed their powers or that they use proper procedures. You study the second part of constitutional law, and this is where we go into more detail in fundamental rights provisions. So looking at the guarantees given to the family, say, under the Constitution, or looking at the guarantees of the inviolability of the dwelling, or freedom of expression, or freedom of religion, freedom of association. That's what this course is concerned with. And then the final subject in the first part of the second year is land law, the law of property. How, you know, what sort of interests can you buy in property? That's what's studied there. And then finally, in the second semester, in second year, you look at equity. This is a subject that's like land law. It deals with property and commercial relationships. Private law remedies is the second subject here. This is looking at the sort of remedies you get, say, damages, or injunctions, or orders for specific performance, the remedies that can be granted by the courts when they're regulating relationships between one individual and another. And finally then, and most importantly, European Union law, which is a major aspect of the Irish legal system, given that most law now emanates from Europe. So those are the compulsory elements in first year and second year. And then when you go to third year and fourth year, as I said earlier, you are given a list of options and you pick 6 in each year, 3 for the first semester and 3 for the second. Now, each of those subjects would be taught through a system of lectures and seminars. You would get 3 hours of lectures in any one subject in a week, and then in addition, every fortnight you'd have a 1-hour seminar in each particular subject. Now, those of you who are quick at maths might work out that that means that in any week you'd have something like 12 hours of classes a week. So have you come to student heaven? You know, only 12 hours of classes and the rest of the time free? Well, sadly, no. It is true that in other disciplines you probably have more contact hours, but in relation to law, when you go to your lectures and you go to your seminars, the expectation is that you will read the material that is covered in lectures. And in seminars, indeed, you have to read it before you go to the seminar, because the seminar will be question and answer. You need to have read up on the cases and then be ready to discuss those cases with the person doing the seminar. And you'll quickly find that when you come to college, that in fact 40 hours a week probably is maybe just about enough time to try and enable you to do all of that research work. And this is one important aspect of studying law, and it's as true of any of the other law schools as it is of Trinity. You do have to be organised, and you do have to be motivated. You know, you will have a lot of time on your hand that you have to use in order to pursue your studies. You won't have somebody like me going around making sure you're in the library every morning, or that you're reading the cases that you're meant to read. So you do have to have that ability to organise yourself and to motivate yourself. Okay? Now, just comparing very quickly the single honours law programme with the law and language degrees, just a couple of things to note here. We've already noticed that to get into either law in French or law in German, you must have a minimum qualification in French or German as appropriate. The second difference, obviously, between single honours law and the German and French programs is that you don't study quite the same subjects. You study certain legal subjects, but then if we take French just initially, you'll also study certain French modules. So, for example, in first year in law and French, you would do four modules, 4 subjects based on Irish law, taken from the ones that I've described already. But then you'd also do a module on French constitutional law, which would be taught through French. Okay? And then, in addition to that French law subject, you will also do French legal methods, French language, and French civilization. Again, all taught through French. Okay, so the content of the first year and the content of second year and third and fourth year, they're different somewhat to the single honours law program. Similarly, in second year, you'll do again, you'll do 4 Irish legal subjects, but you'll also do French civil law in French, and you'll also do French politics and civilization, and French language and civilization seminars, again in French. A big difference arises in relation to third year, because in third year, in both the French and German programs, you must spend the third year abroad. Okay, so you have to go to either a French-speaking or German-speaking university where you would study law subjects, through French or German, as the case may be, and that's compulsory. For other students doing law or law and business or law and politics, you have the option of spending third year abroad if you so wish, but that's optional. But for the law and language students, it's compulsory. Okay. Just to talk about the 2 other degree programs, law and politics and law and business, if we take, first of all, law and politics. The situation here with regard to the subjects you study here in law and politics is fairly straightforward. You do half and half. You do half of your subjects are taken from the law course and half are taken from the politics course. So, for example, in first year and in second year, you will do 3 modules in law. Those are legal systems and methods, torts, contract, constitutional law 1, criminal and land. That's in first year and in second year. And then you'll do 3 modules in politics for each of the first 2 years. So it's a 50-50 split. And then in third year and fourth year, you're given options again, and you must take half of your options in law and half of your options in politics. With regard to law and business, it's slightly different. Again, in first year and second year, it's a 50-50 split. As between law and business, you do 3 modules in law and 3 modules in business for each of the first 2 years. But then when you get to third and fourth year, you're allowed a certain bit of leeway. You could go 40-60, say, business and law. You could go 50-50 business and law, or you could go 60-40 business and law. What I mean by that is that you could shift the emphasis of the last 2 years of your degree towards business or towards law as you thought was best for you. Okay, so again, you're given a list of options, and you've got to pick a certain number from each, but we don't absolutely insist on a 50-50 split in law and business. Okay. Oh dear. Finally then, just to talk about life after graduation. I suppose 2 points to note here. The first is a point that I've made already, that you should think about law as a flexible degree to have, not just something that will zone you into the legal profession, though obviously that's where most law students do end up. But it is a good general degree to have, and it gives you options in terms of pursuing careers outside of the legal world, if that is what you would wish to do. It's also important to note that the law degree is only the first part of your training if you want to qualify professionally as a lawyer. And after leaving university, you will have to undergo further professional training. Now, at the moment, that professional training is provided by the Law Society for solicitors and is provided by the King's Inns for barristers. You should note, however, that the current government has recently introduced a bill, the Legal Services Regulation Bill, which is being debated at the moment. It hasn't yet become law, but it will be debated through the first half of next year. And that does propose certain changes with regard to professional training. And in particular, if it goes through, it may mean that other bodies other than the King's Inns and the Law Society may get involved in providing professional legal training. That's about as much as I can say on the bill at the moment. We have to wait and see how the bill progresses through Parliament, and then what sort of recommendations the proposed authority might make in regard to legal training. But what I am saying to you here is that the law degree is only the first part of the educational process that you will need to go through if you want to qualify professionally. Okay. I supplied the applause myself, okay?